I hate fabric waste. I taught myself how to sew when I was really little, and I would use all the scraps that I could get my hands on, mostly from my grandmother's. And then as I sort of got more into sewing, I realized fabric is really expensive. And so whenever I wanted to start a project, I would try to find other ways. So I would work with remnant fabric, I would repurpose fabric from thrifted garments, things like that, because I found that it was impossible to make any sort of item more cheaply than you could buy in the store. But I had that creative drive to make different clothes for myself, and I was bad at it. I was not good at it. I think that the great thing about sewing is that it's fun, but it's very easy to make mistakes, and you continue to make mistakes, and I consider myself to still be an amateur. So every project is an experiment, and I feel a lot less guilty when I do it with fabric that no one wants. So I found this gigantic shirt in the gutter. I litter pick, so I clean up around the neighborhood sometimes, and I find clothes. And the unfortunate thing about this is that, someone's labor went into making this garment, and then if it gets dumped, like this was full of mud and leaves, I put it through the wash after rinsing it all out, but it's the kind of thing that people would never pick up again once it's been out there in the world like that. It's sort of almost like it's ruined, which is ridiculous, but it's also kind of understandable because of fast fashion making items so cheap that no one puts a value into textiles anymore, or the labor that went into textiles. Now, mind you, this shirt is too big for me, but I thought it would be fun to use it as sort of a material for a creative project, because maybe we should be repurposing the things that we find out in the world more, instead of just throwing them away. Or even, like, I could send this to a thrift store and someone certainly might buy it, but there's always the risk that it goes unloved and gets sent off to be recycled into rags or just to the landfill, which is often something that thrift stores have to end up doing with a lot of their garments. They get sent off to, developing countries to be recycled. There's a lot of energy that goes into dealing with the waste of clothing that we no longer want. So I'm going to put a little energy into seeing if I can make this something that'll work for me. I also realized I have no idea how to film from overhead, so this limbo pole shall be my tripod. I have a couple patterns that I traced from clothes I already have. One's a shorts pattern, and one is sort of a bodice pattern, and the plan is to make a kind of a romper playsuit situation. Now, I don't actually know if this is going to be enough fabric. I kind of checked with the pattern pieces that I had, and I want to be really efficient with the fabric just to make sure that I have enough and I don't need to do any weird piecing, because the other thing is it's got a real pattern to it, and I am hoping to kind of line up the pattern nicely so that it looks good on the garment. So I'm gonna unpick as many seams as I can, and then I'll get going on the construction, or the cutting and then the construction. Ironing is a real game changer for how nicely garments come out, so I highly recommend ironing everything all the time at all times when you are sewing. Okay, so I've got the back and the front detached as well as the sleeves, and I have the buttons detached also, but there are buttonholes which go all the way through, so they put a bit of a limitation on how this fabric can be used. And I think what I want is to kind of aim for using this pattern part here as the shorts. So I think I figured out the spacing, so I should be able to get enough pieces. I'm gonna have to combine a couple pattern pieces. This is a sailor shorts pattern, so it was a bunch of pieces, and I think it will work if I just allow myself that space. So I'm just gonna do it. Now, of course, there's also like the, you know, very valid critique that I suppose someone might have, which is that I could just wear the shirt the way it is. But I'm a small person, and realistically, I just don't want it. It's not. I have enough oversized garments that I don't really. I don't know. I don't want to always be wearing things that totally obscure my body. So it's a cool look. But I'm just gonna try to make this into something I find compelling. So that's a dart, which I'll have to refine. This is obviously not, I don't know, the way a professional would probably do things, but sewing shouldn't just be reserved for professionals. I'm leaving quite a bit of seam allowance on the top because I don't really know how things are going to fit together. I've made the shorts before, but I haven't actually made the bodice before, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes. I might just leave that for hemming, figuring it out. It'll be easier to hem if I don't overdo. Okay, so here what I'm doing is I'm trying to actually pattern match the one side to the other side, and this piece will need to be, the second piece will need to be pieced from an extra bit that I have, but I think that's okay because I was planning on putting the seam back here to have the dart, so it'll come together just fine. So now we have the shorts, and what I'm going to try to do is just to pin things together in a way where the patterns sort of line up best I can, and then I'll stitch all the seams together, and then we'll see if we can get a nice pair of shorts out of this at the least. I mean, I think there's enough fabric here definitely to do the bodice. So. The fun thing about this is, like, normally probably a good idea to make a mock-up, but because this fabric was, well, it was definitely gonna go to waste if I didn't pick it up. I really don't feel too concerned about experimenting or just trying something I haven't tried before, so in a sense this is my mock-up, and I could potentially make another one if I felt like it. I'm gonna be fancy and do French seams. So basically what that is that you enclose the fabric within the seam, and it helps with things like fraying. It also means I don't have to get out my serger or overlocker, I think they're known as, because that machine terrifies me. Both of my sewing machines, all of my sewing machines, are my grandmother's. So my granny gave me her 70s Kenmore, and that's the one I use the most because it's just the most comfortable for me. But okay, so with a French seam, you sew wrong sides together, flip it, sew right sides together, so that takes a lot of work. It's kind of worth it. What I've done here basically is join the front pieces to the back pieces by a French seam on the crotch. And now it's a matter of joining the U together to make actual shorts. So I'm gonna pin that up and then stitch it off camera. Okay, and here's where we start getting excited because the shorts are coming together. I'm gonna have to have a zipper up one side that'll extend into the bodice, so I'm gonna have to pause on these for now while I figure that out, but I don't know. Coming along. So that's the bodice sewn together, and I need to obviously neaten up the edges and figure out maybe a facing or a binding for the top. But this is a romper. I already have to kind of figure out the proportions of things, so I think, you know, it should be about the right length to actually fit my body. So I'm gonna cut out the waistband and sew that on. So for the bodice, I decided instead of lining it, because I already did these French seams and I'm not sure I have enough fabric left, I made a sort of a facing, but I'm gonna flip it over, so sew them right sides together, then flip it over, and then fold it under, because I did a little test on a piece of fabric and I think it's going to be fine that way and it'll be much neater. One important thing is that I'm using a long stitch because I'm going to have to insert the straps, and I don't know exactly the positioning yet, so I'm going to maybe have to unpick some places. So that's the facing. So and now I'm going to iron it. Facing turned out so nice, I almost wanted to be the outside, but anyway, that gets stitched down, but I'm not going to do it yet because I need to have the strap. And this is why I have to be so careful with the fabric. So this is some pieces for the waistband. This is the inside of the collar. This is a piece that I pieced together, also for lining the waistband. And these two strips will become the straps. So I made two straps by just sewing some long strips of fabric right sides together, and just to turn them right sides out, I use a giant safety pin, which you just pin to one side and kind of get the beginning going, fold it in. it's a pretty easy way of making a strap. And I wanted kind of wider straps because I think it looks a little more retro. If I wanted to do a more modern look, I guess I would do. And that's a strap. So I'll iron it. I have to decide if I want it to be like that or the seam on the edge. Probably like that. I ran into a problem. So this is the dress that I used for the bodice pattern. And you know, like all is well and good. It looks about the same size. But this thing is not as big as I am around. This dress has witchcraft and boning in it, so probably wasn't the best choice. I'm gonna have to figure out a different way to do the back because I'm out of this kind of fabric, so maybe a low back. I solved that problem, the bodice not being big enough, by adding some panels and sort of tapering down the back so it'll be a bit of a lower back. And I still need to figure out where the back strap will attach. So what I'm gonna do is attach the both the outer waistband and the inner waistband to the bodice, and then I'll attach it to the shorts, and then I will add the zipper. So I sewed the inner and outer waistband to the bodice, or it says facing the bottom of the bodice, and then I sewed the shorts to the outer waistband, but it's still not attached to the inner waistband. I'll probably attach that by hand, but I'll have to see how it goes. So right now, the back, so I'm gonna finish this. The back is open and I unpicked some of the shorts on the butt. And basically I need to install a zipper along here. Obviously you can tell I haven't neatened it up yet, but I need to drop this opening enough that it'll get over my hips. So this zipper opening needs to be lower. I opened up the zipper opening low enough to add the zipper, but first I'm going to fold down the inner waistband so it's nice and neat and stitch it down. I don't know how other people install zippers, but the way I'm gonna do it is basically I'll stitch back up this opening and then trim off the excess, and then I'll place the zipper on the stitched opening, which is just a basting stitch, and sew it in place with the zipper foot, and then undo the basting stitch, and that kind of makes sure that the fabric opening for the zipper is not too wide. Now I don't have an invisible zipper in a good matching color. I have this brown zipper which was thrifted at some point, so that's what I'm going to be using, and hopefully it goes okay. Yeah, so basically if you baste in the zipper with like big stitches from the back side, and then you sew along your basted seam, you can install a zipper relatively painlessly. I don't know, people are afraid of zippers. And now that I've done that, the satisfying part is you can unpick the basting stitches around the zipper and clean it up, and then you have like hopefully nicely installed zipper. So So I'm doing some top stitching along the top of the bodice just to lock down the facing that I put in. And I'm thinking I might not put the straps in the back and just make it a halter. This is the leftover fabric from this project, and I usually try to be efficient with scraps too, so I'm making a tailor's ham with stuffing it basically with these small tiny scraps that can't be used for anything else, for the sort of more intermediate scraps. I am using them up by making squares for a crazy quilt. I have a bunch of scraps because I've been making masks to give away, and I don't know what I'm going to do with these bigger pieces. I need some inspiration for that, so I guess we'll see. So after I added the zipper, I hemmed all around the top facing of the bodice. I finished the edges of the straps just by stitching up them so they'd stay flat. I hemmed the bottom of the shorts so that the pattern was sort of neat and finished down there. I added some pockets and generally like neatened things up, made sure everything was ready to wear. So this is the final romper, and I actually added some little pockets. One of them was the pocket from the breast pocket of the shirt, and the other one I pieced together. I'm really happy with how it turned out. I styled it with a belt on my Instagram because I think that's actually a cute look, but the pattern came together really well, and it actually fits very nicely, so that's good. I did a burn test on the fabric, and I'm pretty sure it's rayon, so the way you can tell if something's sort of more plasticky or more natural is by how it burns. So in this case, it burned to an ash that kind of crumbled away and smelled a bit planty. I don't think it's a cotton because of how soft it is, so it's more likely a rayon. Rayon isn't the best fabric ecologically speaking because of its production processes, which involve a lot of chemicals and also deforestation. But because I recovered this fabric essentially from the environment, I don't really feel guilty about the content, and because it's not a polyester type synthetic, it won't be releasing microplastic fibers. My understanding is that rayon, the cellulose-based fibers, actually break down in the environment and degrade, whereas with polyester, if you put it through the wash, it's releasing microplastic fibers all the time. I hope you enjoyed following along, and if you didn't, I'm sorry about that. I've never made a video like this before, so it probably needs improvement, but you only get good at things by doing them. Yeah. Have a great day. And I almost forgot to say it, but wear your masks.